Well, welcome to the next video of how to rebuild carburetors. This is a Dellorto, this is a PHF 32A, and I've stripped it apart completely and I've put all the parts in an ultrasonic cleaner, and so I'm just going to show you how to put all the bits together and which pieces to look after. We'll start with the float area, and what we'll do is we'll put in the main float valve. And so we've got a float holder here, and you can see there's ports in the side of it, and there's a gasket that's already in the body. Sorry, I've already put that in. You just screw that in very gently, he says. Just nip that up. 9mm ring spanner do the job. Doesn't need to be too tight, just needs to be enough to make the gasket work. We then have the float itself, and so there we go, we've got the float valve. This is a new one that I've got. You just need to make sure that the tip is in good condition and that it is pliable. It needs to be able to seat into the bottom of the valve itself, so it needs to be able to seat in here. So just make sure that that rubber is in good condition. I don't know if you can see it properly there. Clip it onto the float like this. Don't let it drop off like that. Put it back on again. Load it gently into there, and there should be a pin here. Make sure you put the pin in the right way. There's a knurled end and then there's a smooth end. Put the smooth end in first. There we go, and the knurled end will then, let's give it a quick tap on the end here. That's how done. It's working fine. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the fuel filler side. Here we've got a screen filter. I'm just going to make sure that I can blow through the screen filter and that it's clean. Very straightforward device, fitted over that there. Make sure you clip it down. Make sure it's pressed down on the OD and on the ID, or else it will split. You then have the connector, and you have a bolt and a copper washer. Make sure you use a new copper washer, please, and just stick that in there. This is obviously can face in any direction you want. I just want to put it on just now, so I'll put it on like this, and I'll explain why I just wanted to stick this on so early. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow in here and check to see if that seats. If it seats, everybody's happy, and if it doesn't, then obviously I've got an issue with the valve. It's best to do this before you button everything up. So you can hear there's nothing coming through. So as I lift the float, or if it's the right way around, you'll hear it be able to. So therefore I know that's working. So I'm happy to carry on. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the atomizer in the main jet. He says, trying to find it. Here we go. The atomizer is the long brass section like that with a thread at the bottom. Make sure it's clear and clean, which it is. Stick that in. The right screwdriver, that'll go in better. There we go. It doesn't need to be too tight, and you have a look through the bore and you can see that it's nice and flush, so I'm happy with that. The next thing you do is you put in the main jet holder. You just screw that in, nip that up. That needs to be quite tight because the bowl, when the bowl goes on the top, you have this device here which secures the bowl onto the top, onto the carburettor, and you need to take that on and off and be able to get the jets in and out. And so it's better to have that tight into the body, so therefore when you undo things it doesn't take the whole holder out. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the main jet. Make sure I put the right one. And again, you just choose a size that suits you. I've gone for a 175 in this case. It's quite large, but I'll explain why I'm using this later on. but it has been put on a dyno before, and 175 is what I'm looking for. I then look for the idle jet, and I'm using a 60 in this case. I have used 68s before, but 60 seems to run well with the setup I've got just now, and that goes in the front like that. So there we go. So I've got my idle jet and I've got my main jet in place. I then have a couple of other items to put in here. This is the feeder to the choke, and this is the one which has got an O-ring on it. And you can see here there are some ports in the body, and it goes all the way through. Just make sure it works, and it does, so I'm happy with that. And that will go in to this port here. It's the longer one. You can tell it's the one that has the choke in the side of it. So again, that'll fit in nicely like that. There we go. So that's that down there. And then we have the fuel feed vent, which just screws in there. There's a ball in the middle of that, and so that goes on there. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how the bottom of your carb should look. I'm going to put the bowl on now. I don't have a drain on this, but the drain would normally be in here. You would normally expect a port in there, which would have a screw, and then you'd be able to drain it. It's been plugged up in this instance. This is actually going on a race bike, and we don't have drains on these things because we change the jets so often that it always comes out when you take the bowls off the bottom. So putting a new O-ring in. You can put some grease on this to hold the O-ring in place. Hopefully I won't need to do that because I don't have any grease available just now. And there we go. So that's the O-ring, new O-ring in place. Put it on gently. I've got my aluminium cap and new gasket. So stick those out on like that, and you can see here how the main jet protrudes from the bottom, so you've got access to it. That's why it's important to have that main jet holder screwed in tightly to the body. You put that on there. That's another 14mm. Span it and nip that up. So that's the bottom of the carb done. Next I'm going to put the choke. This is a manual choke, and you can see here it's just a straightforward plunger, and that goes on to the side here, and so it fits in like this. We have a screw somewhere. Here we go. It's a countersunk screw. Make sure you get the countersunk screw. There are no gaskets in it. There is an O-ring in the top of here which you need to replace, and that secures the choke mechanism. Sometimes you'll have a mechanism that will be cable operated, but it's exactly the same fitting here, and it's exactly the same screw. It's just got a different actuation device on the top of it. We also have a thing here called a screw in the parts catalogue, and this fits into this port here, and that is the device that it allows you access to the port that feeds the fuel from the choke mechanism into the body. So effectively what happens is, once I put this in I'll show you what happens, he says. There we go. Cooking with the gas. Yeah, so what you find is that there's if you look on the inside of the body, you'll see a port at the bottom, and what happens is that when you open the choke, like it's here, the fluid, the fuel will come up through this port, which is then opened. The fuel will go along here, past that port, and out into the main stream. There is a port on this side which allows the air to come into the choke body, and I don't know if you can see, but you might be able to see it actually operating there. Anyway, that's the choke. Choke's working, everybody's happy. Next is the accelerator pump. I am not going to use an accelerator pump on this bike. I tend to use much larger jets, and I tend to have it running much higher because it's going to go on a race engine. The accelerator pump system sits on here, but what I've got is a blanking plate that just fits over the top of it, and it seals this off. Ordinarily you'd need to block this port off as well, but because it just vents straight into the body, there's no need to do that. But it is important that if you're going to be putting the accelerator pump on, that you have a good diaphragm and that you have a good seal against that port, because that's the port that feeds into the back of the diaphragm and allows the accelerator pump to squirt raw fuel into the body when you raise the when you open the throttle. So I've just got a straightforward blanking plate on top of this. Here's one I made earlier, as they say, and everybody's happy with it because it just doesn't, it's just basically disabling that port and making sure that there's no gunk can get into the innards of the carburettor, because we don't like that. So there we go. That's that. Next device is the idle adjustment screw, and this is basically just a mechanical device that stops the slide from going any further down into the body. So when the slide's moving up and down like this, once you've got the bike running correctly, you want to make sure that the slide will not go all the way down and cut fuel off completely, or else the bike won't run. So this device basically just sits and stops the slide from going too far down. It is just a pure mechanical device, so it's not that, I won't say it's not that important, but it is just a straightforward beast. So what I do is I screw this in as far as it'll go, and then I back it out to the point where it's not actually contacting the slide, so that then when I've got the bike running, I can then adjust it to suit. There's a little spring in the back of that to make sure it doesn't work itself loose. And I don't know if you can see it on the inside of there, but it's actually recessed into the slide body. In fact, if I look on that side, you might be able to see it a little bit better at the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to then back it out to the point where I can't see it, which is there. Hopefully you'll be able to see it a little bit better. And then I'll adjust that when I've actually got the bike running. The next part of the slow running system is the pilot jet. This is a very precise little bit of kit. It's a long, thin needle that sits in a very, very small port, and allows fluid directly from the bowl into the carburetor body. There's a spring that you need to put on, there's a washer that you need to put on, spring washer, and you've also got an O-ring to put on. This thing tends to be quite sensitive when you're setting carbs up, but what I'm going to do for the moment, I'm going to put it in here, screw it in. If you're taking, you tend not to mess with these once you've got the carb set up. You tend not to mess with the pilot settings, but obviously if you stripped it like I have for ultrasonically cleaning, then you need to. So I screwed all the way in. I should have got the right size screwdriver, but so that's screwed all the way in, and then I back it out two full turns, half, one, 1.5, 2, and that'll do for the moment, and we'll see how the settings work later on. I then have some other parts here to fit in. This is the accelerator pump plug. There's normally a part that goes in here that feeds air up this tube and into the back of the diaphragm. I just want to plug this up for the moment because I don't need them. I'm not going to use this port, but I also don't want guns going into the carb body through this hole. Normally there's a part in there, but I don't have that as part of the accelerator pump system. So there, that's the main carb body all set up. I've got a nice little bell mouth to screw on here. I tend to put this on mainly so I can put the carb on its side. And if you're not as ham-fisted as me, you tend to get this on quicker. There you go. So I put that like that so I can hold that. I've then got the top of the carb to put together, a new O-ring. I've got the slides. And I've got the needle and the clip. I'm putting the needle onto the bottom clip because that's what I found works best for this particular jetting system. There we go. And once I've got all the other parts ready, I'm then able to put all this together, put the top end of the carb together, bolt it onto the bike, and put the top in. And that's me done. Thank you very much.